Hey guys, welcome to the Artisan channel, and man do we have a special device in front of us today. This is the Retroid Pocket 2. It came a little bit later than expected in the mail, but that is because I ordered the special DMG Game Boy color. There are a lot of colors available on their website, as you can see in front of you. If you want to check it out for yourself, just go to the link down in the description. Now, this device is filled to the brim with a lot of features, which makes this possibly the most user-friendly device that 2020 has seen. It has two operating systems, one which is more for advanced users and one which is made for people who are new at retro emulation and retro handhelds in general. It is filled to the brim with all kinds of ROMs. It has a lot of ROMs also available on the market, so you can download those ROMs and plug and play, which is very easy to do. It doesn't have all the ROMs available in the horizon, but it has a lot of ROMs which you can choose from. Now, in case you are more of an advanced user, you can use the open source Android 6.0 operating system, which is full-fledged Android, and tailor the experience a little bit more by choosing your own emulators for the ROMs that you want to play. Now, this device has a lot of features that we need to cover in the video, so let's just get on and unbox this device and talk about features after that. So as an early bird extra, we got a Retroid Pocket branded HDMI port and a Retroid Pocket branded OTG dongle, which is nice. So right off the bat, we are greeted by a screen protector and the handheld itself. Now let's put the handheld aside. Got the instruction manual and we got a USB Type-C charging cable. Now let's take a look at the handheld. It's already made out of tempered glass, but they added this tempered glass screen protector in it as well, and we'll apply it. To apply it, just remove this sticky part. Then you can eyeball it on there. And that's that for the screen protector. Now let's talk about the I/O real quick. We got to the top of the device an HDMI port, so you can hook this up to a TV, plug in two Bluetooth controllers and enjoy some gameplay with your friends. Here we have a USB Type-C port for charging and data transfer, so you can also plug in your flash memory using the OTG dongle that came with the device. And we got a volume rocker as well as the power button and a power LED. To the bottom of the device, we have a TF card slot for the SD card. It came with a 32 GB SD card, but it was almost filled to the brim because it has all the ROMs for the second operating system on it. Here we have a 3.5mm audio jack. It is on the bottom of the device, which is quite nice, so it doesn't droop behind your handheld when you plug in your headphones. Now let's go on and talk about the build quality as well as the buttons, feels and stuff like that. Holding this device in my hand, I can tell it is made with passion. This here is glossy buttons, which is a very nice touch. And on the back we have the Retroid logo covered with acrylic. That's not even something they do on Nintendo Switches. And we got the screw holes covered with a rubber, and also the bumps on the back of the device for the trigger buttons to feel better in your hands. The trigger buttons are a dream to use, by the way, so I'm really happy with that. Of course, this is tempered glass, as I said before, which is very important for a device that is pocketable. We have two speakers to the bottom, and let's test it out. The speakers are just superb quality, really great quality speakers. And we have the analog sticks are not the same on both sides, but that is also with thought. This is a PS Vita modified analog stick that looks like a Nintendo Switch but doesn't have a click to it. And on the other hand, we have a slider type analog stick, which is made like this because you don't want to rest your finger on an awkward position on the analog stick if it was more risen to the top. So they made it a little bit low profile, as you can see. We have the D-pad. It is very similar to a Nintendo 3DS D-pad and is very good as a D-pad. One of the best D-pads I have felt. And the ABXY buttons are also Not contact pads, more like dome tactile buttons, but they're very nice feeling and I like that. The triggers are great. They made it very similarly to the Nintendo Switch, so it is very good quality and you'll never have anything to complain about while playing games. The display is very vivid and has very nice colors. As you can see, the colors don't fade when you tilt the device because it's an IPS display. And yeah, there is absolutely nothing to complain about when it comes to build quality. This device is built very nicely and I'm very happy with that. Now let's talk about the hardware and specs. If you want to check out the hardware and specs in a little bit more depth, you can pause the video and take your time. Now, this device is not much of an improvement compared to the Retroid Pocket 1, but it is intended to be sold alongside the Retroid Pocket 1, not as a replacement for it. If you like the Game Boy scheme, just go check out the Retroid Pocket 1. If you like this layout, then you can go for this device. But it has an incremented RAM memory capacity. It has 1 GB DDR3 RAM compared to 512 MB RAM in the last iteration of the Retroid Pocket. It still has the great 400 milliampere battery capacity for lengthy gaming sessions. It charges in around 2.5 hours. So it isn't that slow compared to other handhelds in the market right now. And it has Android 6.0 currently, but they promised us that they will release an Android 8.1 in the future, which is written on their website. Now, without further ado, let's go and talk about the operating systems that are available on this device. As we said before, this device has two operating systems. One is the open source Android operating system, and the second one is the Retroid Pocket operating system. Let's first check out the stock Android operating system. You can maneuver around using the buttons and analog sticks, and you can press A to access stuff and B to exit stuff. But you can also use the home button, long press it, and then you have a cursor mode. As you can see, we have a cursor. You press A to tap and B to return. You can increase the speed of the cursor as well using the directional buttons, and use page up and page down by pressing up or down on the directional D-pad. The cursor is a little bit too fast, so let's slow it down a little bit. So now it's quite slow. And it is very stock and bare-bone Android, which makes it lightweight. They promised Android 8.0 for the future, so that it can support more newer emulators and games. But I am very happy with 6.0 for now. It is very swift and fluid. It came pre-installed with a couple of emulators like MAME for Droid, Moonlight Plus, RetroArch. And I installed some extra applications like Quake 3 and Half-Life. Actually, RetroArch is very important in this handheld. You can load your cores, which we got MAME, FB Alpha, Stella, Atari 800, Handy, C64, DOSBox, ColecoVision, NES, Super Nintendo, Dreamcast, which is the Flycast emulator. We got a standalone Flycast emulator, which is better in my opinion. We got Neo Geo and PlayStation 1. And a lot of cores we can use using RetroArch. So that is the main application that I use for emulation. But we also got standalone emulators like the Nintendo 64 emulators, because Nintendo 64 doesn't work on RetroArch, sadly enough, because it is made for newer devices and it doesn't run well even if it runs, but it crashes all the time. So Amoeba 64 Plus FZ is the emulator I use mostly for N64 right now. Flycast is a very good emulator for Dreamcast emulation. It works very well. Not full speed, but it works very well. You can also stream your PC games using Moonlight and Steam Link. They already added by default these applications, so you don't need to install them yourself. We are going to showcase Moonlight, how it works. Of course, we got the Play Store and we got full-blown Wi-Fi on here, so you can download more emulators and more games for this device as well from the Play Store. It is working very well, and it is, of course, maybe not the latest iteration of the Play Store, but still works very well for all the games that you can install and download. Now let's go over to the second operating system. You can just boot into that second operating system by clicking on the Retroid app. Once you got it from the toolbox, here you got the toolbox. You say install Retroid Pocket app over here, as you can see, and then you got the application over here. When you press on it, it says reboot to Retroid Pocket system. You say OK, and then it will just change its operating system very easily. So now we're booted into the Retroid Pocket operating systems. Per emulator and per system, all the games are nicely organized, and they have previews for them as well, which is very nice. And you can change these systems by going to categories and then moving your joystick to the left and right. We got Nintendo 64, Super Famicom, Game Boy Advance, as well as Mega Drive and PC Engine. And you can go over to the store as well by long pressing the home button. It goes over to settings when you do that, and then go to enter game market. And we got a lot of ROMs on the game market which you can just download, plug and play. But once again, with this operating system, as I mentioned before, we just have one slight problem which I'm going to show right now. When we go over to key settings, the I/O test, you notice that when you move around the analog stick and the D-pad, that they're a copy of each other and they're not standalone once again, which is a bummer because there are some games that we need the D-pad on one end and the analog stick on the other, like Zelda Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, stuff like that. That's why it's not playable on this operating system, but it is playable on the original Android operating system, which makes it not that big of an issue. There are a lot of games you can play using this operating system, so it is a nice addition for people who are new to retro emulation and stuff like that. Now let's move on to some gameplay and check out Moonlight on this application. As you can see, it runs very well, but we are having one problem. Even if we stream these games from the PC, we don't have R3 and L3 presses, which is a bummer because a lot of games require those. Now you can still enjoy GameCube and Wii U gameplay from the PC over to your handheld, but R3 and L3 not being present is still a very big bummer. Now we're running Half-Life on this device. It runs at full frame rates and runs very well. If you like Half-Life like me, you can download the Xash 3D application for Android and enjoy the full experience with full controls and everything. Now let's move on to PSP emulation. PSP emulation runs very well, but there are some frame rate drops here and there. It still is very playable, but don't expect to play God of War on this device and think that it can run well. This device is still lagging behind a little bit compared to the Arcade 2020 and the RGB 10 when it comes to PSP emulation. The same can be said for Nintendo 64. It is at 480 resolution right now, and it has a lot of frame skipping going on when we're talking about Majora's Mask Randomizer and GoldenEye, but the lower end games work very well on this emulator. It's running at Mupen 64 Plus FZ, by the way, for people who are asking. And now let's move on to PlayStation 1. PlayStation 1 runs very well on this handheld without any problems. I'm using the RetroArch PlayStation 1 emulator rearmed, and it runs very well without a problem. Now let's move on to Nintendo DS emulation. Compared to the Arcade 2020 and the RGB 10, Nintendo DS emulation is flawless on this device. Of course, apart from not having a touchscreen, we can play and enjoy the games that don't require touchscreen inputs on this handheld without a problem though. Now let's move on and talk about Dreamcast emulation. Dreamcast emulation is working very well as well. I am running it on Flycast, which came with the device pre-installed. It runs around 30 FPS all the time. Sometimes we have a frame rate drop here and there, but not a problem in my opinion. Of course, higher end Dreamcast games will not run as well as this, but it is very nice to see Dreamcast running on this device at all. Now, my verdict on this handheld is that it is very nice and It has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth for everybody that wants to have that. You don't have to mess around with the firmwares like the RK2020 and RGB10, even if those run a little bit faster. If you don't want to mess around with firmwares and want to pick up and play and download games from the internet, Google Drive and stuff like that, you can enjoy it on the Retroid Pocket 2. Now that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe and tell me what you think in the comments down below. And I'll see you guys in the next video.